8 quiet travel rule changes that can stop you at the airport. If you're over 60 and planning to fly in 2026, there is something you need to hear carefully. Because starting January 2026, a series of quiet rule changes around passports and IDs are catching thousands of older travelers off guard. These rules are not announced loudly. They are buried in fine print, and they are enforced without sympathy. Airlines will still take your money. Security will still scan your bags. But at the gate or at border control, one small detail can stop your trip completely. We're not talking about forgetting a ticket or showing up late. We're talking about having a passport that looks valid but isn't, an ID that worked for years but no longer qualifies, a document that fails because of a rule most people never hear about until it's too late. In the last year alone, thousands of travelers in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s were denied boarding or delayed for hours over issues they never knew existed: lost flights, non-refundable tickets, missed cruises, and thousands of dollars gone in a single conversation at the airport. Over the next few minutes, we're going to break down 8 passport and ID traps that are becoming more common in 2026, and exactly how to avoid them before you leave home. Because the cheapest travel insurance you can buy is knowing these rules in advance. The fake passport expiration date that cancels trips. Let's start with the rule that cancels more trips than any other, the 6-month passport validity rule. Here's the trap. The expiration date printed in your passport is not the real deadline for international travel. Many travelers look at their passport and think, I still have months left. I'm fine. But dozens of countries don't see it that way. They require your passport to be valid at least 6 months beyond your entry date, sometimes beyond your return date. That means you can be denied boarding even if your passport hasn't technically expired. This hits older travelers especially hard. You plan carefully, you arrive early, your documents look perfect. Then at check-in, the agent runs the system check and says, I'm sorry, we can't let you board. No appeal, no exception, no refund. Asia, parts of Africa, and several Caribbean destinations enforce this rule strictly. Airlines follow it because if they fly you anyway, they're fined. The result? Thousands of dollars in non-refundable flights gone in seconds. The fix is simple, but only if you do it early. Always count 6 months beyond your return date. If your passport expires anywhere in that window, renew it. Processing can take 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer. Waiting until the last minute turns a vacation into a very expensive lesson. When a passport looks perfect but fails the scan. Now let's talk about a problem most travelers never see coming. A passport that looks perfectly fine but is quietly rejected by the system. Starting in 2026, more airports around the world are relying on electronic passport scanners and automated gates. These systems don't judge your passport by how it looks. They judge it by whether the RFID chip inside still works, and that's where many older travelers get caught. You may have kept the same passport for years. It looks clean, no tears, no stains, but habits matter. Folding your passport, keeping it in a back pocket, sitting on it, exposing it to moisture. Inside the cover is a tiny antenna connected to the chip. Over time, bending and pressure can break it, invisibly. When the scanner can't read the chip, the system flags the passport as damaged, not borderline, not questionable, damaged. At that point, airline staff and border officers have little flexibility. The result? Missed flights, hours of delay, costly rebooking fees. This problem affects seniors more often because passports are kept longer, and eyesight changes can make subtle damage hard to notice. The solution is prevention. Never fold your passport. Store it flat. Use a document holder. And if the photo is faded, the chip fails, or the passport feels stiff or warped, renew it early. Arguing at the counter almost never works. Preparation does. Why your driver's license may no longer be enough. Now we come to a rule that catches many seniors completely off guard. Real ID enforcement. For years, the government talked about real ID. Deadlines were delayed. Warnings felt optional. But by 2026, enforcement is no longer relaxed. At TSA checkpoints across the country, officers are now required to verify that your ID meets real ID standards, and many older driver's licenses do not. Here's the problem. Millions of seniors still use licenses issued years ago. No star in the corner, no real ID marking. They worked for decades, until now. A grandmother shows up for a short domestic flight. She hands over her license. The TSA agent looks at it and asks, "Do you have a passport?" She doesn't. Why would she? It's a flight inside the U.S. What happens next isn't always denial, but it is stressful. Secondary screening, extra questioning, full pat-downs, long delays, and often missed flights. By 2026, some airports will go even further. Non-real ID licenses may be treated as insufficient, not just inconvenient. This hits older travelers hardest because they fly less often, don't track every TSA update, and getting to the DMV is harder than it used to be. The safest solution is simple. If you're over 60 and fly even once a year, use your passport as your primary ID, even for domestic flights. It works everywhere. No star required. Europe's new fingerprint and face scan that slows everything down. Now let's shift overseas, to Europe. Because starting in late 2025 and fully enforced in 2026, European border control is changing in a way many older travelers are not prepared for. It's called the Entry-Exit System, or EES. Under this system, travelers entering or leaving the Schengen zone must provide a facial scan and multiple fingerprints at automated kiosks. In theory, it speeds things up. In real life, especially for seniors, it often does the opposite. Imagine this. You land in Paris after a long overnight flight. You expect a quick passport stamp. Instead, you're directed to a machine. Place your fingers here. Look at the camera. But arthritis makes it hard to press flat. Hand tremors cause repeated scan failures. Mobility issues slow the process. Each failed scan sends you back in line. Minutes turn into half an hour turns into missed connections. This is already happening, and it affects older travelers disproportionately. The system isn't designed for stiff joints, slow movement, or assistive devices. Border officers do have alternative procedures, but they only use them if you speak up. The fix is preparation. Arrive earlier than you used to. Avoid tight European connections. And if you have arthritis or medical issues with your hands, say so immediately. The technology isn't flexible. You have to be. No authorization, no boarding, Europe's new pre-approval rule. Now we come to one of the most expensive mistakes older travelers are making, often without realizing it. Starting in late 2026, Americans traveling to most of Europe will need advanced electronic authorization before they can even board the plane. This system is called ETS, and here's the part that shocks people. If you don't have it, the airline will refuse to let you board, even if your passport is valid and your ticket is paid in full. Picture this. You've planned a dream trip to Europe. Flights booked, hotels paid, bags packed. At check-in, the agent asks one simple question. Do you have your ETS authorization? You've never heard of it. You scramble to apply on airport Wi-Fi, but approvals can take up to 96 hours. The gate closes, the plane leaves, and your money stays behind. This rule hits seniors especially hard. Many trips are booked by children or travel agents. Everyone assumes a passport is enough. It isn't anymore. ETS is Europe's version of a pre-screening system, similar to ESTA in the US. It's valid for multiple trips, but it's tied to your passport number. Get a new passport, you need a new authorization. The fix is simple, but only if you know in advance. Apply at least 1 week before travel. Print the approval. Save it on your phone, because without it, your European vacation can end before it even begins. The digital ID trap that's making seniors miss flights. Now let's talk about a rule that sounds modern, convenient, and is quietly causing chaos at airport security. Digital ID. TSA now accepts digital driver's licenses stored in Apple Wallet and Google Wallet, but only at select airports and specific security lanes. That detail is where the trap is. Many seniors hear TSA approved and assume it works everywhere. So they leave their physical license at home, and that's when everything goes wrong. Picture this. A tech-savvy grandfather proudly scans his phone at TSA. The machine beeps red. The agent says, "Sir, this checkpoint doesn't accept digital IDs. Do you have your physical license or passport?" He doesn't. Now he's pulled aside. Secondary screening, supervisor review, extra questions, 30, 40, 50 minutes pass. By the time he's cleared, the boarding door is closed. This happens more often to older travelers because they trust official wording and don't always see the fine print about limited availability. There's another risk. Phones die, screens crack, scanners glitch. One technical issue is all it takes if you don't have physical ID. The rule moving into 2026 is simple. Digital ID is backup only, never your primary document. Always carry a physical ID or passport. Technology is helpful, but at TSA, paper still saves trips. Medications, TSA can still throw away. If you do this wrong, now we move to a rule that sounds harmless, but hits seniors harder than almost any other. Medically necessary liquids. On paper, TSA allows liquid medications over 3.4 ounces. Prescription. Over the counter. Daily supplements you rely on. But here's the reality at security. If you don't declare them properly, they can still be thrown away. This is happening every day. An older traveler packs liquid medication in a carry-on. Fiber supplements, liquid pain relief, medical nutrition drinks. At the scanner, the bag is flagged. An officer pulls out a bottle over the limit and asks questions. If it wasn't declared up front, and there's no clear labeling or documentation, the fastest option for TSA is confiscation. No argument, no appeal. Now you're without medication for days and scrambling at your destination. This affects seniors most because many rely on daily liquid medications and assume the rule automatically protects them. It doesn't. The rule only works if you declare the items before screening. The correct approach is simple. Separate all liquid medications over 3.4 ounces. Place them in a small pouch. As you reach the X-ray belt, say clearly, "I have medically necessary liquids to declare." Bring proof when possible. A prescription label, original bottle, or doctor's note. That one sentence can save your health and your trip. The blank passport page rule that quietly cancels trips. This next rule is the most silent and one of the most expensive. You can have years left on your passport and still be denied boarding at the gate. Why? Because you don't have enough blank pages inside. Many countries require 1 to 4 completely blank passport pages, often 2 pages side by side, for entry and exit stamps or visas. If you don't meet that requirement, airlines can legally refuse to board you. And they do. This hits seniors especially hard. You tend to keep the same passport for many years. You travel carefully, you collect stamps over time, but few people regularly count how many blank pages are left. And eyesight changes make it easy to miscount or miss partially used pages. Here's the hard truth. U.S. passports can no longer have pages added. If the book is full, even if it doesn't expire for years, you must renew it. That means paperwork, waiting, and sometimes missing a planned trip. The fix is simple, but must be done at home. Open your passport today. Count only pages with no stamps, no marks, nothing. If you have fewer than 4 blank pages total, start planning a renewal, especially if your trip includes multiple countries, because at the airport, almost blank counts as not blank. Why? These rules hit seniors harder than anyone else. At this point, a pattern should be clear. These new travel rules don't just punish careless travelers. They hit older travelers the hardest, not because seniors travel incorrectly, but because the system assumes constant updates, fast reactions, and perfect paperwork. Most people over 60 travel differently. You plan carefully, you arrive early, you follow instructions, but you may not check travel news every week. You may not replace documents unless there's a clear reason. You may trust that what worked for years will still work now. That trust is what's being tested. A passport that looks fine, an ID that worked last year, a medication you've carried for decades. Under the new rules, those familiar habits can trigger delays, denials, and unexpected costs. And the costs add up fast. Missed flights mean rebooking fees. Non-refundable hotels disappear. Cruises sail without you. What should have been a relaxing trip turns into hours of standing, explaining, and stressing, something the body tolerates far less at 65 than at 35. That's why preparation matters more now than ever. Fixing problems at home is cheap. Fixing them at the airport is expensive and exhausting. The goal isn't to scare you. It's to help you travel on your terms, calm, prepared, and in control. What to fix at home before you ever leave for the airport. At this point, the solution becomes very clear. The airport is not the place to fix problems. Home is. Every one of these passport and ID issues can be avoided with a short checklist completed days or weeks before travel. Start with your passport. Check 3 things, not 1. First, expiration date. Make sure it's valid at least 6 months after you return home. Second, physical condition. No bending, no warping, no peeling plastic. If the chip fails, the passport fails. Third, blank pages. Count only pages that are completely empty. If you're under 4 blank pages, plan a renewal now, not later. Next, your ID strategy. If you're over 60, stop relying on a driver's license alone. Use your passport as your primary travel ID, even for domestic flights. Real ID rules vary, passports don't. Then, handle digital tools correctly. Digital ID is helpful, but only as backup. Always carry physical documents. Finally, organize medications. Separate liquid medications. Declare them clearly. Bring labels or a doctor's note when possible. None of this takes long, but doing it early can save thousands of dollars, hours of standing, and a level of stress no vacation is worth. Prepared travelers don't argue at the gate. They walk through it. What to say and not say when something goes wrong at the airport. Even with preparation, problems can still happen. A scanner fails. A document raises a question. An officer hesitates. What you say next matters more than most travelers realize. First, stay calm. Raising your voice or arguing almost never helps. It slows the process and increases scrutiny. Second, use clear, specific language. If your passport chip won't scan, don't argue that it looks fine. Say this instead. I'd like to request manual processing, and I'll replace this passport after the trip. That signals cooperation, not resistance. If you're carrying liquid medication, don't wait to be asked. Declare it immediately. I have medically necessary liquids to declare. That one sentence activates a different procedure. If your digital ID isn't accepted, act quickly. Say, I have my physical ID as backup, and hand it over without explanation. At European borders, if fingerprint scanning is difficult due to arthritis or tremors, speak up early. I have a medical condition that makes fingerprint scanning difficult. Is there an alternative process? Officers have options, but they won't guess your needs. Finally, know what not to say. Don't joke about security. Don't argue about fairness. Don't demand exceptions. The airport is a rule-based environment. Calm, prepared travelers move forward. Emotional ones get delayed. In 2026, knowing the right words can save hours and sometimes your entire trip. How early you really need to arrive in 2026. For decades, travelers followed a simple rule: 2 hours early for domestic flights, 3 hours early for international. In 2026, that rule is no longer enough for many seniors because airport processes are slower, more complex, and far less forgiving than before. At TSA, real ID checks, digital ID confusion, and secondary screening mean lines move unpredictably. A delay of 10 minutes can turn into 45. At international gates, airlines now verify passport validity, blank pages, and electronic authorizations like ETIAS before boarding even begins. If something is missing, you're not delayed, you're denied. In Europe, biometric entry systems add another layer. Fingerprint scans, facial recognition, manual processing for medical issues. All of this takes time, especially if you walk slowly, use assistance, or need help understanding instructions. So what's the new reality? For domestic flights in 2026, seniors should arrive at least 3 hours early if possible. For international flights, 4 hours is no longer excessive, and connections matter even more. Avoid tight layovers. In Europe, aim for 90 minutes minimum, longer if you're over 60. This isn't about anxiety, it's about giving yourself margin, because the fastest way to miss a flight in 2026 is assuming the old rules still apply. Travel in 2026, same airports, completely different rules. By January 2026, travel won't look different on the surface. The airports will be the same. The planes will be the same. The destinations will still be waiting, but the rules underneath have changed. 8 quiet updates: passport validity, hidden damage, real ID enforcement, digital ID limits, medical liquids, blank passport pages, European biometrics, and pre-travel authorization are now working together. And they don't care how experienced you are, how many times you've flown, or how carefully you planned. They only care whether every box is checked. For younger travelers, these rules are inconvenient. For older travelers, they are costly. One missed detail can mean thousands of dollars lost. Missed cruises, missed family events, hours of standing, explaining, and waiting. all when your body is least able to handle it. That's the real risk, not flying itself, but being caught unprepared. The good news is this: none of these problems are complicated. None require special status or expensive services. They require awareness. When you fix things at home, you don't argue at the gate. You walk through calmly with your energy saved for what matters, the trip itself. In 2026, the smartest travelers aren't the fastest, they're the most prepared.